Well, hello. It's such a treat to be here with all of you, and I really look forward to getting to know you, especially we have the next 4 years that we'll have the chance, all of us, to serve our communities, and I look very forward to getting to know you and working with you and hearing from you, understanding what your challenges and your successes are in your communities as we work together to maintain the quality of life that we enjoy and to plan and manage effectively for the growth that we're experiencing here in the state of Utah. My name is Dawn Ramsey. I am the mayor of South Jordan City, as they said, and I have the privilege of serving as president of the Utah League of Cities and Towns. And so it's my honor to welcome all of you as elected officials here in the state of Utah. Thank you to each of you for being willing to put your name in the race, for being willing to serve, to step up and do what you can for your neighbors and your friends. I can assure you there will be challenges, but there will be so many moments where you just remember why you did this and you're glad you did. It's going to be a very rewarding experience. And in my experience over the last 4 years, those rewarding moments far outweigh the challenges. So, good call. Good job doing it. Welcome aboard. And really quickly, I do need to give a little plug. Appreciate Mike Maurer coming from the governor's office and his fantastic wife, Liz. They did ask, the governor and first lady have asked for my support and endorsement of this 1 million acts of service initiative. And I'm very happy to do that. I just think, what is there that's negative about trying to accomplish 1 million acts of service here in the state of Utah? I think it's something we accomplish it anyway. It's just not something we keep track of, but I think it's great to bring attention to it and maybe bring some mindfulness to it. So be watching. I will be sending an email. I've never sent an email out to the entire league from me, but I will be sending an email Monday with more information. So if there's information, if you'd like to share it with your neighbors, with your family, put it on your personal social media, you can put it on your town or city's social media, just encouraging people to show up for Utah and to do those 3 steps. Recognize 1 act of service that's been done for you, perform 2 acts of service yourself, and tell 3 other people about it and encourage them to get on board. We are a very service-minded people here in Utah, and I don't think we'll have a hard time reaching that threshold at all, but information will come. I'll send that to you on Monday, so just be watching for that. Okay, now we can officially get started. So it's really a privilege for me to be here with our outstanding city manager, Mr. Gary Whatcott, and I'm going to turn the time to him to introduce himself.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and congratulations on your election and that you're here. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I started my first service to the public in 1977. I answered an ad in a local newspaper to become a volunteer firefighter. And from there, I served in public safety roles until about 2003, and then I left public safety and went to a private consulting business for a little while, and then I came back and worked, was invited to come back to South Jordan City. I was the fire chief there for about 13 years. So I had a great opportunity. But I've worked for South Jordan since 1991, except for that brief 1-year period I was out, and in that I've worked in quite a number of different roles within the administration of the city. I've been the city manager since about 2014. Currently, I was the assistant city manager for a number of years prior to that, about 10 years. So anyway, it's been a interesting ride to be involved in all of these different aspects of city government. But overall, it's been a lot of fun. It doesn't come without a lot of challenges, and it doesn't come without some heart, meaning that I think you have to have some desire inside yourself to want to serve. Because there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to be here. And a lot of them are really interesting comments you get from the public, and some of them it's just that they don't understand what we all do and how we go about doing it. But in the long run, it's really great. we wanted to talk a little about and keep it free flowing and make it interactive. We didn't bring a PowerPoint for a reason. We want to make sure that you're comfortable understanding. This is a very important part of how we are successful in government, is this relationship issue between the staff and the city council, the legislative body and kind of the executive branch in a way. And in some forms of government, it's quite outlined quite differently by statute, depending on what form of government you're associated with. If you're in a strong mayor form, that's quite different than the form that we're part of, and the relationships are probably slightly different. But I think in general, the idea of how we work together is the same to some degree, and it's really the bottom line of our success, is how the legislative body, the elected officials work with their professionals. It's just a critical piece of how we get things done. So, go ahead, Mayor.
I love that you said this is easily overlooked. You probably didn't even pick up on this, but I think it's probably the most important thing that can be said today when Gary just said how our elected officials work with our professional staff. I think that is key. It's absolutely critical. And that might sound like a no-brainer. Well, yeah, of course we're going to work with our staff. Sometimes it's easy to forget as elected officials what our lane looks like and what it is and what it isn't. And that can come about easily, accidentally, because as an elected official, you're going to get the credit and the blame for everything that happens, whether you have anything to do with it or not. Whether it happened 20 years ago, you now will get the credit and the blame. That being the case, sometimes the public doesn't understand maybe what our lane is as elected officials, the things that we do oversee and the things that are not in our control, the things that we aren't in charge of. And sometimes that makes it easy for us to forget. But I think it really is important to define the roles. And if you're not sure what the difference is, well, I don't know, what does our city administrator, or depending on the size of your community, what is our clerk or whoever it is who your staff is? You may have a large staff like we do. You may have 2 or 3 people. Regardless of what the size of your staff is, understand what their role by statute in your city ordinances, what is their responsibility and what is yours? What do they have purview over and what is yours? Regardless of what the public thinks that might be. Understand what that really is, and I can't emphasize that enough. It's really important to go into this with an understanding. There was a situation that happened at one point in a city in the state of Utah, historically, back a while ago, where a mayor in a 5-member council form of government went into City Hall and day one started walking around and talking to some of the staff and saying, I'm not sure we're going to keep you. I don't know that we need your role. There are times like that. It sounds shocking, but if you don't understand what is your responsibility and what is not your purview, things like that can happen. It can get muddled. The roles can get muddled. It's important to not let a little bit of authority go to our heads to the point where we think, well, we really should be the ones dealing with that if it's not ours to deal with. Does that make sense? Yes. Keeping in mind that we have a responsibility to the public who have elected us and put us there. However, the staff does as well as professional staff employees of the city. They also have an obligation to the public. They haven't been elected, but they know that. And in my experience working with cities across the state of Utah of all sizes, they do know that, and they take it very seriously, and they work hard. So I would really encourage you to understand, sit down with your city manager or whoever your person is, whoever your people are, and understand. It does not make you look like a weak leader if you go in and want to know, help me understand, what is my role here in the city and what is yours? And what what kind of things are not my purview, and what kind of things are you looking for me on direction? It's not for staff to tell you what your job is, but it's to help understand maybe a little better about what their job is, right? And the role that they have taken on, what they were hired to do, and what the statute actually says is theirs to do.
And really, quite honestly, every city is a bit nuanced. So every ordinance that provides power to the mayor and the city manager or administrator, whatever your title is outlined usually by an ordinance. And that ordinance can be changed or modified with the council's support, but you should know what it is and how it's structured. Because just in where South Jordan's located here at the southwest part of Salt Lake County, the cities around us, I would dare say every ordinance is slightly different in what the powers and duties are of the city manager. So you really kind of need to understand what that is, and so that you can do it. The analogy that I always like to use is like when you're running down a track. When you're unimpeded in your lane, you can sprint as fast as you can go. But if someone in the other lane starts to encroach upon you, it starts to impede your ability to move down the track. And so if we stay in our lanes and we're doing our duties and not impeding one another, then we can sprint. And when we can move things along really quickly and make a lot of progress. And I would say the underlying pinning issue that seems to be problematic for a lot of organizations is this idea of trust. And there has to be trust both ways. Trust that your professional staff is going to represent your elected body well and do the things, according to their desires, but also done timely, done within budget, or if possible, less money is used to do it, so the most efficient way of doing it. And on the other side, the staff looks to make sure that the elected body, their vision and mission, they have all the right information and tools to make that determination of where the city should be going. And so we just aid in that by providing information to help the elected body make a choice of where we're going. So if we all work together, then we get to that end point, and we can get there unimpeded and run to that place.
So, that really makes me think. Sometimes in a leadership role like this, especially as elected officials, it feels uncomfortable to admit that there's something we don't know, we don't understand. You've probably heard, I'm going to guess, 10 zillion acronyms today. There's a whole different language that local government is, and it's mostly acronyms. So it takes a minute to figure out what people who have been doing this for quite a bit of time are even talking about. And I would really advise you to please don't ever pretend that you already know what everything means. It is absolutely okay, and I think good leadership means it's imperative. If there's something that you aren't familiar with, you don't know the history of it, you're new in this role, you weren't here when that happened 7 years ago, if there's something like that you don't know, or if somebody's speaking and it's a lot of acronyms or something that you're not 100% sure what they're talking about, please don't feel like it makes you look weak to say that. Because it gets easy for people who have done this for a long time, especially professional staff. This is what they do. This is their career. This isn't a side gig. This isn't something that they're just doing for a couple of years. This is their professional career. And so they may be talking about a subject and talk about it in such a way that they just forget that, okay, that's right, you are new at this and maybe don't speak this language yet, right? And so it's okay to say, remind me what that means? What does that stand for? Because you'll leave the conversation much more informed. You'll learn faster that way, and it will actually help you be a better leader. So please don't think that you have to look like you already know everything. It's understandable, and no one's going to think you're a weak leader for not coming in. All right, day one, I know everything as if I've been doing this my whole life. That's not going to be the case. So I would advise you not to pretend that it is. It's okay to ask for help, and more often than not, those who have been doing this a long time and your professional staff, I think will be very helpful in trying to explain something or help it make sense. If you don't get the explanation you need, or if you need more help, there's other people that you can ask. You can ask other elected officials on your council or your mayor, or you can reach out to others who are, in your region, in your nearby community. You can contact any of us here at the league. You can reach out to me or any of our league staff. There's a lot of places to turn for help understanding things, but it's okay to ask your staff and to really trust their advice. There's a reason we hire the best people that we can find to be our professional staff to help us run our communities. And my advice would be to trust them, keeping in mind there's always going to be situations where it might be the elected official or it might be the staff member who maybe doesn't do everything we would like to hope people will do. Those situations can happen. But as a general rule, I think for the most part, we have amazing local elected officials and amazing staffs who work very hard for their communities. So I would advise, if this is what your engineering staff is telling you, you can trust it. If they're saying this is what we recommend and working with UDOT, this is what we suggest, I think you trust that. And that would just really be my advice. You can be mindful, and I think trust your senses. If you're getting a sense that something might be a little bit amiss, you can look into it and you can do a little bit of investigating, but really far and above most of the time you can really trust the professional advice that you get from your staff, and I would encourage you to do so.
And I think you could all probably relate to this. So coming from a public safety background, every time we have a major incident, we would go back and critique that incident. And typically, the number one reason that something went wrong on a complicated incident was communication broke down somewhere. And so it's no different. So we all know, and I think we all have a fairly intuitive sense of how important it is to talk to one another. So I think in the case between the elected body and your professional staff, it's this same thing. It's a communication that's ongoing constantly. And nobody likes surprises either way. And so, I always try to make sure that the mayor, she's the most accessible elected official for me because she's really available. A lot of elected officials have full-time jobs, and it's a lot harder to do that. But I at least try, when there's something coming down the path that I can get a read on that they may not be aware of, I'm trying to communicate that to them in some way that they are not surprised by anything. And we talk about this prior to every meeting. So before every council meeting, the mayor, myself, the city attorney, and the assistant city manager, just because of the size of our organization, we sit down and go through the council agenda, the work meeting agenda, the council agenda, before it ever takes place, just to make sure that something hasn't arisen since we set the agenda, that something hasn't changed or popped up or modified some discussion we're going to have. And we take seriously, that meeting usually is an hour and a half long, and it's just about communicating through all of the issues that we have on the agenda. It's just another way of helping make the meeting go smoothly without any surprises, if that makes sense.
That's been very valuable, and it's something that we started 4 years ago doing when I was first elected and we had the chance to work together. We call it our council prep meeting. But having each of us on the same page and each of us understanding even what challenges we could face. There's a potential we could hear from this group. We may have people coming to speak about this. The staff's received a few phone calls about this. I personally have talked to several people who are concerned about this. Being able to get us all on the same page really helps our meetings go better. I couldn't agree more. Nobody likes surprises, and it's really helpful as chair of the council and as the person conducting the meetings as mayor to be as informed as our staff is, and it's really helpful for our city administration to be as informed as the mayor is about what we're looking at for these meetings, and it really does help us move forward. Yeah. So that's something I would recommend. It's worked really well for us, and you can modify, do whatever is going to work for you, but that's been really a great tool for us.
And I try to I have an opinion just like everyone else. And, I can express my thoughts and try to change things. I don't typically do that unless I'm asked. When we're talking about legislative items, particular zoning issues, for instance, what I try to do and what I have my staff try to do is in the staff report, we try to make sure that the staff report is well formatted and that it has all the information that an elected official would need to make a good decision. So we even talk about what are the fiscal ramifications of this zone versus changing this zone or leaving the zone the way it is. What are the impacts that it may have on our service, providing our service levels? Is it going to be a major impact on police, or is it going to have an impact on our public works department somehow? So I don't know how everybody does it. I typically believe most people have some kind of staff report that goes to the council. I hope you should maybe look at those, make sure they're adequate for you. The staff is always willing to adjust those. I've worked for a myriad of mayors and councils over the years, and they all have a little bit different style or ways that they want to see the staff report written. But typically, the content and how it's organized is important to the elected person more than it is the staff. And we try to really make sure that you have the right information to make a good decision. It's not my job to make the legislative decision, but I do believe it's my job to give all of the information that I can, the correct data points that are necessary so that you can, or the elected body can, make a very wise and good choice on their decision making.
So I'm wondering, by a raise of hand, how many of you here in the room have a city manager or an administrative staff at your city? Well, that was quite a few. Okay, how many of you here come from a smaller community and you're wearing a lot of those hats, and you may have a clerk or a treasurer or something like that, but you don't have very many people on your staff?
Yeah. Okay,
so see, this is going to be different for you, right? I mean, the advice is the same, work with who you have, but you're not going to have a city engineer who comes to give you data, right? You are the city engineer and you are the public works department, you are all the things, right? Yeah, okay, so in those cases, and some of you, that means you'll receive county services, right? You'll be working with the county to provide some of those services. I would recommend that you just continue or begin working really closely with them, get to know them, both the county elected officials, of course, but the staff who will be over the public works for your city, or those who are providing that, get to know them. I think you have a unique opportunity when you're wearing that many hats. You get to hear all the sides, and you may not have somebody putting together much of a staff report for you. It is kind of a different form, a different role, and it's a lot of hats to wear. But I think, though, you really do have the chance to make well-informed decisions and to seek out support from others. Don't be afraid to reach out to other communities and say, how have you done this? What does this look like? Reach out to some of your county officials or communities of similar size or circumstance. Or again, as I said, go ahead and reach out. One thing I love about local government, especially here in Utah, we're not that competitive with each other. I think we tend to like to see each other succeed and answer questions. If somebody calls me, I'm not going to say, oh, good luck, you're on your own. I'm not sharing that. I'm not telling you that. I would never do that. And I have a hard time believing any of you would. I just think we have the chance to really work together, and I think we should, and I don't think we should be afraid to. It really is okay to reach out and ask other communities of similar circumstance, similar people who have been through something. We're all going to experience things that nobody else in Utah has experienced. We've had some really random and unique things that have happened in South Jordan over the past couple of years that don't really tend to happen anywhere. I mean, we here's an example. We had a situation where it was discovered that we had a gentleman who was experiencing maybe some mental distress and some challenges. who had acquired more explosive material and put it in his house than the FBI had ever found in any one single house in the history of the United States. Okay, so that doesn't really happen in South Jordan or in Utah or anywhere, but it did. And so we had a lot to figure out. And maybe nobody else had been through that specific thing, but we had experts from communities everywhere who brought in, including even at the federal level, but mostly it was local. We used our best experts at the city, and we brought best experts from around the county and in the state, and bomb squads, and all the people who could come and really help. We had a significant amount of mutual aid trying to figure out what to do. It doesn't have to be an explosive situation like that to reach out and get help. Definitely use help if you've got something like that. If something like that happens to you, call us, because it's taken a couple of years, but we got through that. So my point is really, you'll experience things that you've never experienced and perhaps your community has never experienced. Don't hesitate to reach out, especially if you don't have a professional staff. If you're the one wearing all of the hats, rely on others who have been there and done that. And if you don't feel like maybe their advice was very helpful, ask someone else and keep asking until you find someone who can really help you work through it.
What questions do you have? Because I think it's good to just kind of have an interactive dialogue a bit. That may be actually more educational for you than us just talking up here. But I think we wanted to try to see what we could do to help answer your questions and concerns, if you have any. We've got about 5 minutes.
Are you guys going to arm wrestle?
I think for me as a newly elected official but a former municipal employee, I think I'm most nervous about not going out of my lane, but I want to use my knowledge and experience to help. So what do you think is the best way to approach? Like if someone wanted to bring up, maybe we should look at impact fees, maybe we should look at the stormwater, what we charge for that, different things like that from an elected official standpoint. What's the best way to approach it where you're not crossing over and pushing them to do things that maybe aren't the priority, but would be beneficial for the city?
You take that.
I just think it. Is this working? Is this working? Okay. Yep. Sounds like it's pretty loud.
Yeah, it is. Not now.
You can't hear me? Okay.
There
No, it's just in and out. So, when you have a city council and a mayor, typically they come from a variety of backgrounds. All of that is all good knowledge to have, because you never know, in a local government setting, you're going to experience every unimaginable question you can't even think of today. And all of those experiences are used to draw upon a conclusion. I would say that your past experience is no different. You would bring it to the table and say, well, this is what I've experienced before. But, things may have changed since the last time you had been in that part of the business or something. It's just, I would just use it the same as you would any other past experience. Hey, I'm just wanting, this is what I've experienced, this is what I've understand. How would you look at that today? Or, it's just your approach. It's just not being domineering, but more partner-oriented and more collaborative in nature. I think that's how we try to look at things, because look, we have if you just take our executive committee at the council and the top staff that we have, you have 8 or 9 people, and every one of those people are strong opinions and have they're older people that have life experience, and they've had a lot to bring to the table, to the discussion. And those opinions can be varied and strong. And we have those in a lot of discussions, right? It's just the approach. It's the environment that you want to create for good dialogue, because there's no reason why you can't have disparate and different opinions, but come to a way of approaching those in a way that you can accept the answer, accept the opinion, but yet still move on past that. So none of that hurts you. I think it helps you in overall, that background knowledge. And it's no different for me. So I was a fire chief, and I worked in law enforcement for a while. When I talk with my chiefs, I mean, I could use that same background in a similar scenario that you're talking about and try to force a way or say, well, that's not how I did it, or, this is what I remember how I did it. But I don't do that. But I do have a background which is helpful for me when they do bring me concerns or problems that I can go, yeah, I can relate to that. I understand what you're saying and can bring it to some useful knowledge.
Great. Thank you. I believe Mayor Tran had a question.
I'll ask a question real fast, since I have the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
You're good.
I didn't even see that you had the mic.
Here in the next couple of months, obviously we're going to start talking budgets and things, and that will include obviously staff budgets as well, and the staff will be involved in seeing those discussions. If you're budget constrained, that could be kind of delicate. Any tips in how you work with your staff effectively when you're trying to manage a lot of constraints on the budgets, including their budget?
It is delicate, and I would be so bold as to say, if I had to guess, budgets are probably constrained across the state of Utah in every community. I would imagine none of us are exempt from feeling that right now. With inflation so high, with the cost of labor continuing to go up, with the labor shortage and the cost of materials going up, I don't know that there's any of us who are like, oh, this really hasn't affected our bottom line. It does. It really does. And those are difficult conversations that you, as very first-year elected officials, are going to have this year, this budget session. Do we have enough? Perhaps you haven't raised taxes forever. Nobody ever wants to have to do that. Nobody wants to have to do that. Those are difficult discussions that I believe will probably happen in every city and town across the state this year. That being the case, I would work closely with them. It depends on your form of government as to who oversees the budget and who builds the budget and creates the budget, but I would listen to your staff. And as they come and try to defend the reasons why we really need this, it's not just them that need it, it's we running the city need it. And try to maybe remember that, and then also discuss through some of those. Is there anywhere we can make cuts? Take a good look. Priority-based budgeting became quite popular back in about 2008, and it's not as popular anymore. That is still how we do our budgeting process in South Jordan City. It got us through that 2007, 8, 9 era, and it's continued to serve us well. But whatever it is, however you do your budget, and whoever in your community puts together the budget, I would just have really those candid conversations and say, tell us, keeping in mind that when staff comes and implores, please don't cut this, try to understand where that's coming from. Because perhaps communication might make it look like something other than what it is. We're just fighting for our job. Well, it might actually be that it's going to impact your service levels in XYZ quite a bit. So don't be afraid to have those hard conversations, because I think every one of us in this room are going to have those hard conversations this year to really try to figure out how to keep going with such budget constraints. And taxes is a sensitive subject, and everyone feels overtaxed. All of us, we all feel overtaxed. But most people don't realize that local government collects the smallest amount of tax of everyone, right? The entirety of our tax bill. When you take a look at how small the amount is that we collect as local government, it's a miracle that we're able to do what we're able to do. But just be sensitive and go into it rather than defensive. Well, we're going to have to tell the staff this has got to go and this has got to go. Go in with an open heart and an open mind, really listening to try to understand. I would give advice to don't be afraid to have fun. It's good to become friends. It's good to laugh together. It's good that we can have difficult conversations and serious conversations, and then we can also laugh. And remember that everyone who is working for you, for your city, that they're people. They have families, they have feelings, they have needs, and it's important, I think, to remember that they're people. Good leadership and a good culture in your community, especially in your local government, I believe starts at the top. And you have the opportunity to play the biggest role in creating the culture that you want in your local government, and I would just encourage you to do it. I would encourage you maybe to be very careful there's a lot of people out there who are looking at local government and all they see, I know our time's up, but let me just say this really quick. All people see these days is federal government, and people start, rather than the old saying Tip O'Neill used to say back when he was Speaker of the House during the Reagan days, he said, all government is local. Well, now people think all government is federal. And it's a challenge for those of us in local government. 4 years ago when I ran for mayor, everyone wanted to know about density. They wanted my thoughts on density and on housing, on zoning, on open space, on transportation infrastructure, traffic. That is not at all what I was asked about this time. This time I was asked about vaccine mandates and masks and about critical race theory and things that I have no authority over, things that are not my jurisdiction, things that I've not been granted authority over, and I know I'm not alone. So that being the case, you've taken on a lot, you've agreed to a lot, but I would just advise you to remember what is your role and be very careful and thoughtful before you decide to maybe make a very big, bold public statement about something that might not actually be within your authority to do anything about. You can say what you want, do what you want, but just be mindful that some of those things that are very loud things, you may have absolutely no authority over whatsoever. So I would encourage you to just really be mindful of that as well. And I think our time's up, but I know Mayor Tran had a question. Okay. All right, thank you and welcome.